A role-playing game, or RPG for short, not to be mistaken with rocket-propelled grenade, is a type of game in which players take on the role of a character. In tabletop versions of RPGs, the story is usually divulged by one player who takes on the position of a game host, frequently referred to as a dungeon master or game master. The game master presents the other players with a story of some sort that usually has some kind of obstacle that needs to be overcome or a goal that needs to be met. The players then describe their actions within the story, and the game master informs them of the outcomes of their actions. In most RPGs, this also happens within the framework of rules and game mechanics. Characters can perform certain actions if the rule dictates that they can, and the rules dictate how success or failure is to be determined. Hello all, it's Marco from Random Door Media, and in this video I want to talk about the game mechanics in the role-playing game Dungeons & Dragons, and what I'm going to go over will also apply to some other RPGs as well. I've been playing role-playing games since the mid-1980s. Although I have tried many such games, the ones that my friends and I played the most was Dungeons & Dragons. Beginning with the basic D&D in my teen years to the current version of 5th edition, during those many years I noticed many odd things while playing the game. Usually when we encountered something questionable such as, how does a character see when they're invisible? Either the magic makes the light pass through you, or the light bends around you. Either way, light is not reaching your own eyes, therefore how can you see? The discussion would usually end with something like, hey, it's a world where dragons and magic exist. Enough said. In other words, in a fantasy world where the very laws of physics are not limited to how things work in the real world, how can one question how anything works? But that's not what I want to go over though. Not the story or theme, but the mechanics. There are aspects of the game mechanics or the rules themselves that I found rather odd. Many of these are numerical oddities, and here are some examples. The first example is in the Dungeons & Dragons 3rd edition with a rule called Take 10. If the character is not threatened or rushed when they need to make a skill check, the player may forego rolling the die 20 and have the result be as if they rolled a 10. For example, if the difficulty to swim a swift river is 15 and your character has a +6 bonus to swimming, you could choose to take 10, so that your total result would be 16 and you'd succeed. Here is where the oddity comes in. Picture this. A character is walking across a slippery floor and the Dungeon Master states the player must make a difficulty 10 balance check or the character falls prone. The character has a dexterity of 10, meaning a bonus of 0, and no skill points, meaning their total modifier is +0. No problem. I can take 10 and succeed 100% of the time. 10 plus 0 equals 10, success. However, in this exact same scenario, if the character had a 9 dexterity, only 1 point lower than the previous example, their total modifier would be -1, meaning that to take 10 would be an automatic failure because the result would be a 9. The player would have to roll the die 20. They would need to roll 11 or higher, which is a 50% chance to succeed. This means the character's chance to succeed drops from 100% to 50% just because of a difference of 1 ability point, going from dexterity 10 to dexterity 9. And speaking of 10, this brings me to the next numerical oddity. To me, this seems to be a flaw in the core game system, as you will see in a moment. Why does the 5th edition Dungeons & Dragons and other role-playing games that use a die 20 have 10 as a standard difficulty number? Armor class is calculated as 10 plus bonuses, and the baseline difficulty for skill checks is 10. Passive skill checks are calculated as 10 plus modifier. Imagine a character that's not proficient with a weapon, with a 14 strength, that goes to attack somebody with a 14 dexterity and no armor or shield. Although both sides have the same modifier, +2, the player rolling the die has the odds skewed 5% in their favor. The defender's armor class is 12, so the attacker needs to roll a 10 or higher on a die 20. That's a 55% chance of success. A roll of 1 through 9 would fail, and that's only 45%. Shouldn't this be a 50% chance? If 2 opposing sides are equal, shouldn't it be a 50% chance that either side would be victorious? That would happen if the base difficulty was 11, but since it is 10, it is skewed in the favor of whoever is making the check. How odd. I noticed this in other role-playing games as well. Recently, my gaming group has been playing the Shadow of the Demon Lord, which also uses a D20 system. Shadow of the Demon Lord also uses 10 as a base challenge number. The ability bonus of a character or an enemy is the ability score minus 10. So a 13 agility means their agility modifier is plus 3. When making attacks, the roll required is the target's ability score, for example, a 13 agility. When my character has to make an intellect attack with a plus 3 bonus versus a target that also has a plus 3 score, this should be an equal chance of success or failure, 50-50. The odds are even. But just like with Dungeons & Dragons, I would need to roll a 10 or higher to succeed, meaning my chances of success are 55%. The odds are skewed 5% in favor of whoever is rolling the die. Why isn't the base number 11? With 11, when checks are done with equally matched combatants, the chance of success would be 50-50, not 55-45. Was the game designed this way on purpose? There are a few other oddities that I noticed during my many days of playing Dungeons & Dragons that do not pertain to the game mechanics themselves, but to the application of certain rules. In the 5th edition Dungeons & Dragons, if all combatants are blinded by some effect, then no one suffers any penalties. If the adventurers are fighting a creature with a gaze attack like an Umber Hulk, they have the option to avert their gaze, taking disadvantage on the attack against the creature, but they don't have to make the saving throw against the gaze. Or create some effect in which everyone is blinded, including the Umber Hulk, like magical darkness. Everyone gets disadvantage to the attack because they're attacking while blind, but they also get advantages for attacking a target that cannot see them, so the two cancel out. This means the adventurers can fight the Umber Hulk at no penalty and without having to worry about the gaze. That's rather strange. Taking a look back at the 3rd edition Dungeons & Dragons, there are spells and magic items that provide a defensive benefit that can only be overcome by the enemies. Wait, what? Yeah, the spell Righteous Might provides damage resistance that is overcome by evil. The magic item, Mantle of Faith, also does the same. Why would you create a spell or create an item that protects you from damage, but the protection can be bypassed by evil? Presumably, the people casting the spell or using the item are good and would be fighting against evil. If the creature has this as a natural ability, then sure, they wouldn't have any control over it. But when you're designing a spell or creating a magic item, why would you include this flaw? Bizarre. Going back to the 5th edition of Dungeons & Dragons, we have abilities such as Evasion, which both the Monk and Rogue classes have. As written, the ability is, beginning at 7th level, you can nimbly dodge out of the way of certain area effects such as Red Dragon's Fiery Breath or an Ice Storm spell. When you are subjected to an effect that allows you to make a dexterity saving throw and take only half damage, you instead take no damage if you succeed on the saving throw and only half damage if you fail. The rules do not say anything about a character not being able to use this ability if they were, say, unconscious or paralyzed. You would think if a person was unable to move or even unaware of a threat that they would not be able to nimbly dodge away from some area attack, but the rules do not state that. The consensus of online forums is that because the rules do not state otherwise, then an unconscious or incapacitated character could still benefit from evasion. The write-up for this ability in the 3rd edition of the game actually states, a helpless rogue, such as one who is unconscious or paralyzed, does not gain the benefit of evasion. Why was this detail left out of the 5th edition? Who knows? This is not the only time that some rule does not add up, and it appears to be due to some aspect of the game being overlooked by the writers, which make me question how well the game was playtested. If the rules from Xanasar's Guide to Everything are being used, then the cost for an uncommon magic item is a die 6 times 100 gold pieces, or 600 gold pieces maximum. A suit of adamantine plate armor is listed as uncommon, meaning that it would cost 600 gold pieces maximum. According to the player's handbook, regular plate armor costs 1500 gold, therefore it would be cheaper to buy a suit of adamantine plate armor. This could be solved by adding a house rule that adamantine costs the 100 to 600 gold plus the original cost of the armor, but why wasn't this just included in the rules to begin with? Was this game playtested? During the playtesting, did nobody encounter this? Lastly, this is more of a personal gripe than an objective look at the game mechanics. One of the problems I have with games like Dungeons & Dragons is that the die 20 is such a large swing between failure and success. I just find it annoying to see a character with no skill points and an average statistic succeed at a skill check, while a character that is proficient in a skill and a good statistic fail simply because of the dice rolls. For example, the wizard with +4 Arcana skill and a +4 intelligence, and some feat or ability that gives them advantage on the skill check, fails a DC 15 skill check because they rolled a 5 and a 6. But the character with no Arcana skill and a -1 intelligence succeeds at the check because they rolled a 16. I guess in some cases like this, the DM could just say the character succeeds with a passive skill check, but that would be up to the DM. That's not something which is hard-coded into the rules. However, speaking of a wizard and Arcana skills, several game systems allow players to select their skills and allocate skill points completely arbitrarily. This means that you could have a high-level wizard character with no knowledge of Arcana or spellcraft, or a high-level cleric with no knowledge of religion. I would think that a character like a cleric would have proficiency or skill points in the religion skill automatically. In the 5th edition of Dungeons & Dragons, the description of wizard under the heading of Scholars of the Arcane states, "Though the casting of a typical spell requires merely the utterance of a few strange words, fleeting gestures, and sometimes a pinch or clump of exotic materials, these surface components barely hint at the expertise attained after years of apprenticeship and countless hours of study. Yet a wizard character does not have to be proficient in the Arcana skill. What did they learn during those countless hours of study?" "Hey wizard, what do you suppose is the purpose behind this magical effect on the statue?" "I have no idea." "What do you mean you have no idea?" "I don't know anything about magic." "What? You cast magic spells every day and can use magical scrolls. How do you not know anything about magic?" "Well, I'm really good at jumping, hiding, and playing the banjo." "Never mind then. Cleric, do you think the statue has any religious meaning?" "How would I know?" Well, anyways, that is all I have to go over in this video. Are there any rules or game mechanics in some role-playing game that you find odd? Let us know in the comments. Thank you for watching this video. Take care, everyone.